Andrew Hozier Byrne, thank you so much for doing Irishman Abroad.
Pleasure.
We are sitting in your hotel here in Shepherd's Bush.
Yeah.
And when I meet you in the lobby, you are obviously extremely tired. Maybe you could describe to the listener right now what you're coming off the back of. Like where have you been in the last, say, 3 weeks?
3 weeks. 3 weeks we went from Australia. I had a leg in Australia about 2 weeks long. And then we went from LA to Australia, back to LA for about 2 days, and then to New York for 2 days for kind of promo and a VH1 show, and then Dublin for about 2 days, and then London for now, which is the last four days or so. Here we're doing kind of promo and rehearsals for upcoming. The next month we'll have a lot of things with the BBC and things like that. So just
And that's been the case for like a couple of years now.
Yeah, just about. Definitely, it's kind of the last year, especially, has maybe been more busy. But it's nearly coming up on 2 years on the road. Yeah, and certainly, when it starts off kind of in drips and drabs, and then hopping around Europe. But definitely, things have And as you get closer towards the end of your touring cycle, I guess things get busier because everybody needs that piece done.
Get it all done before the end of school term.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And when you go back to Ireland, I believe you stay with your mum and dad. You don't own a place, have a place or anything there?
Not at the moment, no.
So it's all out of a suitcase?
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much the last 2 years out of a suitcase. I think it wasn't viable for me to look into a place. And I kind of moved in and out of town. As I was finishing the album, I kind of would rent short term here and there. But it just doesn't make sense. It just, I'd be renting a place I'd never see. So... Yeah, I just kind of visit family. It's only ever a day or 2 days at a time. So yeah.
Well, when I'm looking up and doing the bit of reading that I could on you, the first thing that strikes me is that home that you go back to, that family that raised you. Your parents come from such kind of odd backgrounds in terms of the typical Irish family. I mean, they're both artists essentially, and they give you the opportunity to march to the beat of your own drum and be who you want to be. Can you tell us something about that upbringing and maybe your first memory of them giving you this freedom?
Yeah, it's a funny one, as it wasn't. I wasn't raised in what you would call like an arty, like it wasn't like an arts and crafts type family, that kind of way. But at the same time, my mom definitely, she was always an artist, and she did a lot of projects along the way. She just could turn her hand to a lot of things, from like making and designing silk scarves to like making kind of like, I think at one stage like clocks, and then paintings, and always everything she kind of turned her hand to, it kind of definitely, I don't know.
She could do,
yeah, and it really, I don't know, it was great in that regard. My dad was a drummer when he was a young man, and he would have played a lot, like in a lot of live scenes, and it would have, before they had children, they would have been able to. I think my mom had a cafe, and she was like a chef, so they kind of were able to support themselves as young professionals in that regard. And then kids came along, and so I suppose when children came along, then my dad he worked in a kind of a 9-to-5 type thing.
So 9 to, yeah, you see, when you say drummer, I mean, I immediately think, like, what kind of money is he pulling down drumming in Ireland at that time? I mean, it's such a... Yeah. Like, I mean, my dad had a weird job too. He's a horse trainer. But you immediately associate vast money with it. There wasn't.
Yeah.
But drumming, like, how is he supporting the family on drums?
I don't know. I suppose this is why he would have made the decision soon after the kids came along to kind of do more of a 9-to-5. He actually... This was before IT was coming in, like before banking and stuff and insurance was done through computers. And I think it's some way, I think he did it like some kind of a test to show that he'd had brain for computers, that these new type of computers that were coming in.
Right.
And so he ended up going into IT and doing night classes to do his just in that kind of way that your parents somehow grafted through. You don't know how they did it.
Exactly, yeah.
Just doing night classes to get a kind of masters and stuff in whatever computer technology for this, and then supported us all the way along until unfortunately he got ill and had to retire.
I'm always fascinated that like my own dad made sacrifices for 4 kids. I mean, your dad sacrificed his creative life
Yeah.
for you guys.
Yeah.
Was there ever that sense in the house that, well, this was my former life and God, I would have loved to have stuck with it, but not everybody gets blessed with that?
Yeah, I think no, and amazingly not. I'd have to admire your parents for like kind of not having regrets in having children and putting aside their life before. And that's something that still amazes me. And I think it's only something that you kind of become more aware of as you get older, and you kind of look at your parents in a new kind of way. You know, you kind of decry their existence during your teen years. And you arrive as a young adult, and you're like, how the fuck did you do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And like, well, you know, why did you do that? You know, for me, like, you know.
What is the quote? At 13 years old, I couldn't get over how dumb my parents were, and by the time I was 25, I couldn't get over how much they'd learned in the interim.
Yeah.
It is a bizarre one. That the thought of you, say, giving up your thing for children.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of it's something that this modern generation kind of feels a bit like. It's certainly a gripe that you hear now is like, and then I had to give all that up for the kids. But your parents put you on this path because my wife's a Montessori teacher, and you know, when she identified you went to Jared's, it's a Montessori. It's linked to the Montessori movement. Is that correct? Do you remember going to Montessori or that child-led learning?
Yeah, I was in Montessori. I would definitely not in St. Jared's, but I think I was in a local Montessori. I do remember Montessori very well.
Really?
Yeah, it was a Montessori in Delgany. That was fun. And then I ended up going to Delgany National School nearby. I'm trying to think.
I know, because it is like if you ask me to think about my play school, essentially that those years when you're going way back.
Yeah.
But I just know from knowing about the method, about how the empowerment of the child to do what he wants.
Yeah.
And that seems to be there for you early on.
True. And absolutely, and I do think about this often, is that I would be one of the first generations where kids were treated in a way that they were told that they were special, and that's not something my parents' generation were afforded. And I'm sure and there's a few years between us. I don't, maybe less so as well yourself.
Yeah.
But definitely I don't think this is not a generation previous that has had the amount of opportunities that mine has, or certainly that I can say that I had, at least, and having options, and also having options to not try and work towards a kind of a 9 to 5 and quick into a job. And I always find that with my parents' generation, that you didn't have a choice. You went straight from home to work, and you found your place, and that was that. Yeah.
You found your place. I can't wrap my head around the story. Maybe you can clear this up, because what I read is you are spotted by a record label doing a Nina Simone cover in your school.
Yeah.
First of all, what is a record label guy doing at a school talent show?
Yeah.
And second of all, can you tell us anything about what Nina Simone song you were covering, and what was the sequence of events?
Yeah, it was a weird time. This was years. I remember it was a buzzy out time, but it was years and years until I actually released anything. And it led to working with a few producers and stuff like that. I suppose I'll give you the timeline of events. I think I was in 6th year, doing the final year, and I would have, one of the few things I was very good at school, I suppose, and something that the school was fantastic, was they had a few kind of talent shows every year, or opportunities where students could get up and just do a piece of music or sing a song or something like that, which was great because it gives you an opportunity to not only to kind of showcase what you're practicing, but also gives you a reason to practice. And I think then this wasn't quite. It was actually a transition year students event. Like, as their kind of transition year project, they were putting on an event for charity, which was essentially a talent show.
Got it.
And managed to get Louis Walsh to come, and
through
and
Louis.
I know, right?
God.
And again, I can't believe how privileged I was that this was, because it was the opportunities that actually going to that school afforded me now unthinkable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where my manager saw me. So my now manager had children in the school, and I was in their class, and so they would have seen me from a young kid singing every now and then eventually and so she always kind of had an eye on me, and I suppose maybe saw something there. And then through her, she's good friends, I think, with Louis Walsh, and he came along and said, yeah, absolutely, yeah, it's a fun event for charity or whatever. I'll come along and be the judge in this thing. And then this is like very, very early days, and I went up and I sang, just me and like an electric guitar. It's actually originally a Bee Gees song, "To Love Somebody," and it was written for Otis Redding, would you believe? And then Otis Redding passed away, so the Bee Gees recorded it. And Nina Simone, I hadn't heard that version, Nina Simone's version of it, which I loved, and I just went up there and sang it. And that kind of like, I remember like Louis kind of being very, very supportive and going, oh wow, that's great and that's amazing or whatever, and wanted me to meet somebody in Universal Ireland. And then I met himself, and I was lucky enough then to kind of, through that, they wanted to just kind of see what music I had been writing myself. And that year I performed on like the IMRO stage then at Oxygen, which for me was this kind of terrifying event, because I had this music that I had been writing since I was 16 and never played to anybody. And then I was kind of asked, would you get up on stage at the IMRO?
At the biggest festival
yeah,
Ireland had to offer.
Yeah, and do the IMRO, whatever, it's like the new act stage or whatever. And I wasn't a member of IMRO. And then also go for a meeting with Mark Crossingham in Universal Ireland, which for me, as this Leaving Cert student, I was kind of more worried about my Leaving Cert, and I was just like, freaking out. But also had never shared any of my music with anybody, never played it to anybody.
What was that music like? Is it resemble anything that we're hearing now?
Yeah, some of it maybe, some of it would. The kind of more, a lot of it was kind of like folk, like you could like folk blues. Or what I suppose you could describe as like folk pop, or like. Are
you embarrassed when you look back at it?
I totally, yeah. I look upon it with worst scorn, and I think like anybody would, it's like
first attempts. That's what they're about. Yeah,
exactly. And it's like you're opening up your diary again, and like,
yeah,
it's like, Jesus, what?
Is there any footage of this to be found?
There probably is, and I don't even want to say that there's demos of it, because I just don't, I'd rather it never surfaces, and like I'd love if it didn't. But like they were very, it's juvenilia, you know what I mean? It's
sure.
You look at it with, it was naively written and whatever else. It was kind of like, I suppose, like maybe like something between folk blues and kind of soul pop or something was. So it was very mishmash of stuff, and I didn't know how to produce a sound. All of it was just me and a guitar. Anyway, that kind of came about, and then I went to, this was coming towards the end of my school year, the next year in college, I managed somehow, illiterate as I am, to get a place in Trinity College, like musically illiterate, managed to get a place in Trinity College, which was my first choice. And I knew in my heart of hearts that I kind of wanted to make, pop music, or not pop music, but I use the word pop music in what, as in popular music, as opposed to classical contemporary or something that would, or study kind of composition or something. I wanted to make music for today. I wanted to be a songwriter. And so I kind of went into college burying that feeling, going, I can't do 4 years of this. And also struggled very hard, because theory was never my strong suit.
And there's a ton of that if you go to study music in Trinity.
Yeah.
Those first couple of weeks, I mean, I love having people on the show who talk about how it just wasn't for me. I mean, I even look at my own college thing and the struggle of it, just going, this is nowhere near who I am or what I want to do.
Yeah.
Tell us about your struggle, because you realise it like early doors, right?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I definitely would have. Yeah, and I don't know how. I think the only way I got in must have been
Louis Walsh.
No. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, making phone calls, pulling strings. I had done entrance exams for 3 other music colleges that same week, and so I was just
in the zone.
My head was switched on to exactly what I needed to there I was, probably writing out chord charts and like trying to pretend to myself like I knew anything about theory, and I managed to get in and whatever. It was the first few weeks. Yeah, I was fine with owl and keyboard, so playing things and singing back, but everything else was just absolute, like I just knew I would be struggling through. So Universal Ireland set us up with, at the same time, I think it was October of that year, of my first year of college, they were like, we want you to do a demo. We want you to demo this song, the cover that you had did of the Nina Simone song. We have some studio time for you down in Offaly. I think it's called something Nutshed Studios or something like that. And Niall Brezzi of the Blizzards is at this point just moving into kind of production. and he's kind of, this is before his solo project. This is 2009, and so he's kind of keen on kind of working as a producer for some things, and so he was going to be the producer of this demo. So then that led to me like kind of, and it, like this is, I'm just a kid and like
still in first year in college.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I remember kind of going now like to meet Brezzy, who is an Irish celebrity and stuff in a hotel somewhere, and just to have a chat and stuff. And it's a weird old time actually thinking back. And then eventually, but the thing was, this mixed with the schedule for these demos conflicted with an exam timetable for the Christmas exams of the first year of college, and I very much decided that I would do the demos rather than sit around and do the exams.
Did you talk about that with your parents?
I did, yeah. They knew that I was that's what I was doing. I think they tried to see if there was any way that the two, trying to pressure me, trying to make the both of them work, but I wasn't all that eager in making the two of them work, to be honest. Like looking back, I was fine with missing the exams, and but I couldn't. It was the way it was. I was going to miss that exam if I stayed in the weekend.
So tell me, do you have in your head now that you've met Brezzy and you've got this studio time and Universal, huge label, are interested? Mm-hmm. You must have in your head a vision for this working.
At this time, no. Like I mean, my demos were very much what, and I actually had never. It's before I discovered Jeff Buckley, but I could describe it as kind of just an electric guitar, kind of like a electric kind of Motown sounding kind of gentle electric guitar, and just voice. So I didn't know anything about arrangement, and I didn't know anything about I knew maybe what I wanted what it to feel like, but I didn't know what I didn't know how to articulate that, and it took me years, and such that nothing really came of this demo with Niall. I think it was kind of. It was an interesting learning experience. It was a good learning experience, and I got on great with Niall Breslin, and he's a really lovely lad, and I worked with him subsequently again, and I worked with a few producers then. But it was around that time after that I made the decision that I would, having missed those exams, probably not pass the year, and would have to repeat the first year. And I looked into maybe going off the books for a year and seeing if I could concentrate on songwriting and come back. But as a first year, you're not afforded that. You're not afforded what they call going off the books. So I decided to leave and had to talk to my parents about that and went, look, this is what I really want to do. And 4 years of this, I will be unemployable after 4 or 5 years.
And heartbroken.
And no closer to what I want to do. Yeah, a bit heartbroken, exactly. So they supported that. But it was a good 3 or 4 years. Yeah.
The idea of leaving college after 4 years of misery is not what the design is. Yeah. If anything, you get a qualification that you may not use, but you're a happy person who discovers and goes into things your parents must have understood how unhappy you were.
Yeah, and I cannot say I was unhappy. Like I wasn't suffering in college. I was having a great time.
What was bringing you happiness?
I suppose meeting new friends, and kind of, I was one of those, like, I went straight in. I think I was class rep and just, I just enjoyed talking to people and just meeting new people and doing little things, but also singing and stuff, like all the choirs and stuff. Like, it just probably that kid who could excel forever doing extracurricular activities, justify being in the college for many, many years, and actually never do anything academically successful.
There's tons of them.
Yeah. I could have been that guy. And in fact, after I left college, I still hung about the college, like taking part in like choir events and orchestra events, which, if you ever see me doing something with Trinity Orchestra, if there's some stuff online of me doing Pink Floyd and stuff, that's after I left the college, but I was still very much involved in the orchestra and just hanging out with all the guys and having fun and lending my voice to it. But I kind of knew that there would be 4 years of me struggling academically, enjoying it, but really it would be fruitless, and I would be 4 years further away from the skills that I needed to actually. And the more times that I got into studio with producers, I learned a lot of great producers, but I always felt that there was something that I wanted to do myself, and there was something that I wanted to articulate, and I didn't know how to, and I figured I didn't know how I was going to learn that, but it was a lot of very slow years.
Yeah, I want to hear about this, because my understanding, and like, you've got to understand, Andrew, there's a myth growing around you and of this skyrocket that is your career, and it fascinates me for you to hear you say that there was 3 very slow years there. Because for a lot of people listening to this,
Mm-hmm.
they're in those 3 years.
Yeah.
They may be listening to this going, well, maybe this guy's got some of the answers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That 3 years, from what I understand, is you on the open mic circuit, which, you know, for people that don't know, is a very bustling circuit in Dublin, and it's competitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is that 3 years for you?
There was a bit of open micing. There was definitely a little bit of that. I wasn't driving at the time, and I couldn't afford to live in Dublin. Eventually, actually, what happened is I had a publishing deal eventually, which was great. And I
What does
moved
that
into
mean?
town. It's kind of like the rights to the music would be dealt with by a publisher who kind of, it's not quite a record deal. It's just about the intellectual property.
Right, so they're not going to make CDs,
no,
but they'll pay you for the work.
exactly. You would get an advance. And
I see.
That would be an investment as well too on their part. And this is early days. I haven't released anything, but thankfully, somebody kind of saw something in me. And then I took that money as all young men would, and I kind of I was like, boom, straight, I'm going to move into town. You know what I mean? And live with my old college friends for a bit. And that was a great experience, great learning experience, but also you learn just what you won't achieve from living in a city and trying to distract yourself with the fun you can have there and thinking you're getting work done. And once the money was kind of starting to run out, I kind of just thought and I was, trying to fill my days with meaningful work, but also complaints in the first week, like threats of being kicked out of the place from neighbours being like, this lad's playing music, and I don't like it. And so eventually I kind of moved back home, back to Wicklow, and I think with everything, I never really liked showing my hand with the work. I was never happy with the work until I was happy with the work, and I didn't know when that was going to be, and I didn't know how that was going to happen. So it wasn't until I kind of just sat down and started producing some of the demos myself, and just not having a clue what I was doing, just a microphone, a laptop, and a MIDI keyboard, and just started fiddling around with ideas and trying to capture the kind of atmosphere and the sound of it.
Tell me this, because I'm to talk to James Vincent McMurrow next week,
Mm-hmm.
and I found, like, looking into both of you, there is this constant feeling among, like, singer-songwriters that I can create a thing, I can write a thing, but then when I take it someplace to record it,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to compromise a certain amount of it.
Yeah.
Your decision to go, right, well, you know what, Brezi's a nice guy and all these people that I've worked with are great,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe me sitting alone in my attic might get it closer to what will make me happy.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Essentially, yeah. I think eventually I landed on that, and in the same way with working with a producer or working with anybody, a meeting of minds over something, there is some amount that you let go of, and for the calming of another mind. You know what I mean? And
sure, their vision has to meet your
has
vision.
to meet yours, yeah. And I think maybe it was some kind of control freak thing, or maybe it was something that I couldn't land on feeling entirely happy with, or always asking myself what if, or what if I'd explored these routes or whatever. And eventually, not a lot going on. I was, I just decided that I would have to I just as you said, I just decided, fuck it, I'll just sit in the attic and see what comes out of it, and throw my hand at actually seeing what it would sound like if I was to put the bare bones of the song down and actually follow through and produce and arrange the rest of it.
The attic gets mentioned an awful lot.
It does.
Can you tell us about this attic? And is it what we imagine attics to be? Or did your dad actually have a drumming studio upstairs with a decent bit of soundproofing?
There was actually no soundproofing, sadly, but it's a good sized space. As the house is actually like a bungalow. It's on one level, but the attic then is large by virtue of that, I suppose. So there's a bit of space there, and it's where all a lot of my dad's drums would be. And he, over the last few years, had been kind of looking into doing kind of sound engineering and stuff. So there was some recording equipment. It started, there was like a little 8-track recorder or something like that, and I did it. My first demo was trying on that, on a little like an 8-track digital recorder or something like that. And then eventually, then I got a laptop and just started working on that, first on Cubase and then on Logic. So it was very kind of just rough and ready type stuff. But I was just throwing stuff at a wall and trying to, no ability at mixing or anything like that. And then I think I was in the middle of a project with the label who were developing me at the time, Ruby Works, who I'm signed to, an Irish label. And we were kind of in the middle of a project, or had been working on something, but I had these demos, and I just said, have a listen to these. I'd love to look into doing this as well too. I'd love to look into developing this, and they were like, wow, cool.
So they loved them immediately?
They liked them, yeah. They liked them. And
how surprised were you in that moment? Because, like you say, you're holding your hand to your chest at this point, and maybe there is, I know from my own creative perspective, when nobody's listening, you're a lot freer. But then the idea of presenting it to someone, I mean, you're kind of going, well, this is my gut instinct.
Yeah, yeah.
Will they agree?
Yeah.
Are you surprised, or are you going, well, yeah, they are fucking good. I know they're good.
I was, I don't know what I was. I think I was excited, but I knew in my kind of heart of hearts is that was the route that I had to go, and that I had tried everything. I'd learned a lot, and I'd done a lot with other people and stuff, and like really, really great folks. But I just felt that I had no choice in myself then to do this, and to go this route, and to follow the kind of route of this music. And also the writing style had changed, the atmosphere had changed. Well, I won't say the atmosphere had changed, but it was the first time that I was trying to capture the atmosphere of the music sonically. But also the writing style very much had changed, and I stopped kind of giving a fuck, and I thought I wasn't writing music anymore that would be palatable to a kind of to the middle. Which is interesting, because then I ended up in the middle. You know what I mean?
I mean, you're not thinking about the radio, and here you are constantly on the radio.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
like that. Like, I hear people talk about this, giving less of a fuck. All the time.
Yeah,
you're consciously going, well, I couldn't care less if it's played on the radio.
Yeah,
it's what I want.
Yeah, exactly.
They recognize that, and they get on board.
Yeah,
and put you in touch with Rob.
With Rob
right?
Kirwan. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which was, I think, one of the best. Then that was one of just this massive kind of sea change as well.
Are you two best friends? What's the relationship there, and why is it different from the other guys?
Yeah, I think Rob, in a way, it was different. Rob is just he's great to work with. He's a lot of fun. He's a hilarious character.
Who is this guy? People don't know him. He's one of these guys behind the scenes, but he's behind like De Laurentiis as well, like albums that people love. But here's this dude who's bringing it out of you guys, or helping you guys find it.
Exactly. Well,
tell us a little bit about him.
Rob Kirwan, he's a producer, and he's based in Dublin. He was based in London for a long time, and I think he in Berlin as well too. I think he started his career kind of as an engineer and a tape op. But he's worked with a lot of people from Brian Eno. I think he spent a good bit of time working with Brian Eno, and kind of doing engineering. Like, so a lot of his engineering stories are fantastic. He just and he was worked in kind of, I think, Windmill Lane for a long time, and so it's fascinating to hear him talk, and him being in the studio and engineering for XYZ. But he's kind of, after moving into production, he's produced PJ Harvey's Let England Shake, and De Laurentiis, I think Depeche Mode as well, he worked with. But I think where I kind of met with him is that a lot of the boundaries of the work was there. Like, the song structure was there. We didn't change all that much. The kind of sonic atmosphere was there. The feeling of the music was there. And in that way, I felt safer as well too, because you knew what you could get out of these songs, and he knew what you could get out of these songs. So
he was turning to you for direction, whereas in the other cases, they were very much going, could you do this? It's
kind of, I suppose it was more of a blank canvas on the other ones, because it was just a song, it was just a voice and a guitar is what I was going in with. And so there's a blank canvas to do a lot. And when you don't have a box to think within, sometimes I find you can tie yourself up and you can go different ways. And then it's all exciting when you're in the studio, but then you come away from it and you listen to it again. So it's a hard balance, because it's sometimes what you can call demoitis, where you're so used to listen to your demo and your original idea of something, but you don't know what it is, that you know that it's not quite there, but there's something. Sometimes it's just an ego or a pride thing, and then you listen to the finished product and you start to panic, and you're like, this isn't what I imagined. So it's hard finding that line between avoiding demoitis and making sure that it is exactly what you wanted. And I think that takes time and takes skill to know exactly what you don't and what you do want, and ultimately how to articulate that. So I think I had arrived maybe at a bit more of a point when I started working with Rob, that I knew a bit more what I wanted from it, but also the songs, a lot of their arrangements were in place. So with something like Take Me to Church was one of the first things we worked on. All the backing vocals, all the kind of choir parts were there. Some of the instrumental elements were there, where the beat lay and stuff, and trying to put mad reverbs on it in the demos to try and, you know, where the hits were and stuff like that. So the kind of, it was all there, but it just sounded, it was all digital. It sounded, you know, it had no.
It didn't have that grit.
It didn't have the grit. Didn't have the depth. It didn't have the, you know, it didn't have the knowledge that Rob, you know, brought to it, and the skill that he brought to it. In you know, we re-recorded a lot of then the instruments. We re-recorded the piano and the drums, and kept a lot of the vocal parts. Interestingly enough, I think he saw what I was kind of where I was going with it, and he saw what its potential was. But also, there was no room for there was no blank canvas there to just be like, oh, what about this mad crap, you know, mad shit that when you have a blank canvas, you know, you have a lot of places a lot of routes that you can go to.
Can I ask this, because, you know, we had Boy George on the show before,
right? Okay.
And I love asking him things like, when you write something that ultimately goes on to be like multi-platinum, do you know in that moment? Like I heard Lady Gaga say that, you know, when she wrote Poker Face, she was like, oh, I knew, because I'd written so many dogs before.
Right, okay,
this was going to be huge. This is my meal ticket.
Yeah, yeah.
I heard you and Rob laughed about the idea of these songs being played on the radio. Surely when you finish Take Me to Church, you're going, well, we knocked it out of the park there.
Yeah, well, I was proud of it. And I remember, you know, coming up and down the stairs, listening to Rob kind of mix it and being like, that sounds good. That sounds more than you know, I was proud of it, and I was impressed by the feel of the song, and also just that song took me a good year to actually write. But that I imagine that my career would be more of a slow grower, like, and I think he as well described, you know, he likened it to people like maybe Nick Cave or like, you know, PJ Harvey, that it wasn't music that would connect immediately with a mainstream audience. And I think how it did for other reasons, for many different reasons, and a lot of it was fortune and timing. But I definitely didn't. It just didn't. When you were at the time, you're listening to the landscape of pop music, the landscape of top 10. That song, it wasn't. It just unlikely. It didn't fit. It was very unlikely. So we would joke, and like one of his sayings when you're kind of finishing a song is like, "I'll just mail that straight to the charts, okay?" And you know, like what number are we going for this one? Like, you know what I mean? Kind of, you know, just absurdities like that.
A little bit of huge news for the podcast for myself as well. Dundrum Mill Theatre on December 22nd. I'll be performing my first show with Kanye West, Kevin McGahern, Rory O'Hanlon and Damo Clark. It's our annual Christmas comedy gala with Yeezy, McGahern, O'Hanlon and Damien Clark. Tickets are available through the Mill Theatre website, and all the details are available through my Twitter as well, at Jarlath. It's a special night. We do it every year. It's nearly sold out. I've moved fast if you haven't got a ticket. For everything else related to the podcast, all you got to do is go to jigsaw.com. This week, sent out a ton of t-shirts across the world for people who've taken the time to donate in the lead up to Christmas to keep this show going. Your donations are the lifeblood of this. This is crowdfunded, and you're the reason why it keeps going. So please continue to do that. Go to jigsaw.com today. Buy yourself some greeting cards. My Christmas cards are up there and available now. 3 different boxes. There's the classic old goldies and a brand new range for 2015. Other than that, all I really have to say is that today's show is brought to you by currencyfair.com. If you're not aware of Currency Fair, they're the Saviour of the Irishman Abroad podcast. Without them and your donations, there's no way this thing would be where it is today. In fact, you're listening to this on a microphone paid for by Currency Fair. Currency Fair is an online service which allows you to exchange and transfer your money overseas. Cheaper, faster, safer way to do that. If you're like me, you're used to going into banks and just having your head melted by them coming up with a ridiculous exchange rate that you've never seen and you can't find on xe.com, but for some reason that's the exchange rate they're giving you. Oh yeah, and there's a little fee on top of that for them clicking the button. Currency Fair does away with all of that.
all those ridiculous charges disappear. You get a much better rate on your money, and you end up getting way more out the other end. If you're sending a small amount, very quickly the savings add up. If you're sending a large amount, you can actually compare and contrast and see the masses of money that you'll save. You think I'm joking, but to date they've helped people to transfer 2 billion euros overseas. So they're not any Johnny fly-by-nights. They've saved their customers in the process of doing that 100 million euros. You want a piece of that action, go to currencyfair.com or download their iPhone apps in the App Store. Guys, let's get back to this chat. I won't delay any further, but if you'd like to make a donation to the show or rate, comment and subscribe to it, go to iTunes and jigsaw.com. Now let's get back to the conversation with the brilliant Andrew Hozier Byrne.
Can I ask, because I know you blew in the face talking about it, but you mentioned the aligning of the planets, or the sequence of things that occurred. Obviously, there's the video, the sharing of the video by Stephen Fry, and Lauren Laverne, and Zane Lowe. There is the timing of the subject matter, and Ireland's own path towards equality. You're in the middle of a viral sensation. Very few people in the world will ever know what that feels like. What does it feel like? And when do you realize that this is more than just, it's doing quite well on YouTube?
Yeah. I remember the night. I remember the night that it kind of went viral, and I think one of the big things. I was never on Reddit, and I since have discovered what Reddit is. I never understood what Reddit was, and the video was released. And I think a day after it was released, it got a few nice views in the way like an Irish video. It's very hard. Ireland's a small place, so if you have a few thousand views by the end of the day after releasing a video, you're doing very, very well.
You're happy.
If you have 10,000 views by the end of the day, you're doing very well. So we had a few thousand views, and I think it was an old friend of my brother's, and I actually still to this day, I've asked my brother, who do you think that was? I still to this day don't really know who it was, but did the first upload onto Reddit of the video, shared it, was the first person to share it on Reddit, saying in that kind of, I suppose now it's synonymous with Reddit, like going, my friend's brother released a music video and it's actually kind of good, and they're kind of going like,
it's the backhanded compliment of Reddit.
Yeah, it's like going, I thought it was going to be shit, obviously, because it's like, my friend's brother released a music video, let's all have a laugh at this. Kind of way that Reddit is committed to, like, I spent a lot of time on Or Cringe then, just like, it's just people like loving to just look at,
feel better about their lives.
Exactly, yeah. But it was actually, I don't mean to be, like, it was a very nice, he uploaded it, but the tagline was, and it's, it's good, it's a good video, it's, and that fucking just went, and I think we were at like 10,000 views an hour or something like that. But I remember receiving a text. I was in town meeting a friend for drinks for their birthday, or maybe they just had a show in like Workman's, and then took the train home, and then got a text saying like, it's blowing up, it's now on 100,000 views, it's now on 150,000 views, it's now on 200,000 views, it's now on, and whatever, it just kept going and going and going. And I remember just kind of going home and opening up the laptop and having a look, because I was kind of in disbelief. And that was a weird kind of exciting little moment.
Is it exciting? Is it fear? Because I'd imagine there's got to be a part of you where your stomach goes tight, where you're like, what does this mean?
Yeah, I think that this fear is there definitely, in that you're like, shit, there's a large audience now looking at this, and you want to know what their immediate reaction is. And oftentimes people are quick, they don't consider their opinions before they give them online. Whatever their first impression is, like, that's shit, or this guy's a dick, whatever it is, or
it's got to be loud, it's got to be extreme.
Exactly, it's always loud.
No, this is quite good, will be heard on those comments.
Yeah, or like, this is, exactly, like this is above average, is very rarely seen in a
it's the worst thing that's happened to humanity. This will change music forever.
Yeah, exactly. It's either one or the other, yourself. And the feedback was largely good, and that calmed me a little bit, because that calmed me a bit.
So you're reading it all at this stage. I'd imagine at this point in your life you read nothing.
Exactly. Yeah, I less so.
Okay.
I still do now and then.
Yeah, it's impossible not to, right?
Yeah.
Everyone Googles their name at some point.
Yeah.
It's our hidden shame.
It is. It's a dark hour. Like,
The second kind of surge, if we're to refer to it that way, is in it appearing in the Beats commercial. Would you agree with that?
That was a big kick over the fence. Yeah. That was a big kick. Yeah.
Your decision to do that, I mean, you don't strike me as the kind of guy, and we've talked about it now, where you weren't thinking, oh God, Vodafone would love this. You know?
No,
so
exactly.
it must have been a tricky enough decision to kind of make it corporate.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah, it is, and I think for any artist, it's a difficult decision. Certainly, for me, it is a difficult decision.
What are you weighing up? What's so difficult about it? I imagine it's a large check.
Yeah, it actually isn't. Would you believe it's not? It's
what you'd think.
It's not. Yeah, it's not a large amount of money. For sometimes it depends on the sync, and like sometimes if somebody puts a big number in front of you, you'd consider it. But the way I see it, I'd rather not cheapen a brand or cheapen your own brand. You could use the word as your own brand or your own, who you are, for the sake of a quick check, because the money goes. And if you sully your name, it's there for a much longer time. If
the flat in Dublin taught you anything, the money does go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it did teach me as well the value of a few quid as well. But I think it was a tough one. I think the potential of the audience who could hear the music, and I considered a lot of things. I remember, like, would I turn my back on an opportunity to have my music heard by a larger audience for the sake of my pride, or like when there's people out there breaking their backs for any kind of opportunity similar to that, or would I be able to go forward also thinking what might have been had I or as well too, but the potential of the audience that could hear that song. But also, if it's either my song or somebody else's, and Dan Auerbach and Patrick Carney, there's a great interview that they do, and then they're asked a question about, putting your music towards an ad campaign or something like that, which is something that the Black Keys, they were just honest about it. Their parents were teachers, they hadn't grew up without a penny, and I think he recalls saying that Hellman's Mayonnaise wanted a song, and they turned down a check for something like $100,000 or something like that, on the basis of what would people think of me, or the basis of this isn't rock and roll. This isn't. And actors don't really face that kind of thing as well too. There's a bit of a double standard with corporate tie-ins and stuff. But
sure, comics face it all the time.
Yeah.
This is fascinating to me because, there's this whole thing, this stupidity in some ways. Like, I respect, the protection of your art. But this is the conversation that goes in your head, that do I want to reach the most amount of people?
Yes, yeah.
Or do I want to perform my stuff in the basement of my house?
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
And I think that some comics and some musicians, out of a fear of failure, would prefer to perform it in their own place.
Yeah, totally.
You had an ambition, despite preferring smaller gigs and more intimate rooms, to reach as many people as possible. The numbers that it did reach, exceeded everything. Yeah. Whatever that tense moment you had looking at 100,000 views on YouTube, when Beats goes out and it's LeBron James working out to your song, it's now a global phenomenon, and I mean that must be a new level of fear.
Yeah, a little bit, and also there's that voice in your head, and you're worried what people will think of you for, in that way that the classic sellout, the sellout accusation, and I don't know, you can go that route and not play by the game as it is now, and not play the game as it is at the moment, and as you said, sit in the basement and have the benefit of thinking that there's something more sacred about who you are, and also there is that as well too. It's unrelated as well too, but I find when an artist or a performing artist, like a comic or a visual artist as well too, if they monetize their work, or their work is monetized or valued at highly, it's somehow it cheapens what you do, because as an artist or a performing artist, why do you want
it shouldn't be about the money.
Shouldn't be about the money. So do you want me to starve, or do you want me to have a family as well? I would like to take care of. And I was talking to a friend who's an artist here in London, and she herself, artists, it seems they struggle with the idea that maybe their work actually has monetary value, and that
there can be a guilt, right?
Yeah,
I mean. Andrew, you're comfortable now, right?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. It's been a good year for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there, you don't suffer with that guilt? right?
Not so much. I've been lucky as well too, because this was an unlikely. I somehow managed to, it's a difficult decision when you're lending your music to anything that's corporate or more commercial. But I think as a whole, I still managed to kind of keep the music intact, keep what I wanted from the music intact. So I have been very, very lucky in that regard. Somehow, Take Me to Church connected, and that opened the door to the album to a large audience in America. And not everyone is as fucking lucky as I am.
And not everyone survives it. Now, you are still the plucky underdog. You're still the guy with the debut album.
Yeah.
And, I hear that you're writing as you tour, which must be extremely difficult if you don't have time to read or the energy. Writing that work that's eventually going to appear on the second album.
Yeah.
Is it there yet? Or is there a part of you that thinks, I can tour away, but I'm eventually going to go back up to the attic? I'll need that seclusion.
Yeah, I think I imagine the attic is where I'd be headed to. I'm enjoying touring. It's been the most fundamentally life-changing 2 years of my life since the music was released, and the tour is amazing. It is tiring, it's challenging, but you're kind of watching your dreams come true day by day. You know what I mean? And so it is just it's amazing. But the hunger is to make music. I kind of as well too. I started in thinking that I never would have an audience like that I have now. But the desire was to make music that moved me, or that would hopefully move other people, and I kind of just want to do that again, and that's why I'm reluctant in a lot of ways to kind of register all too much what's happened in the last 2 years, and I won't say reluctant to register it, but I'm reluctant to
dwell on it.
To dwell on it, yeah. And I suppose it's very, very strange when sometimes when you're asked questions about, it must be mad or this crazy, and you just kind of. It helps that you're so busy that you don't get a chance to dwell on it. But I'm straight off the road. I will disappear off the radar. I'll probably spend some time with family, but I just want to go back to that and to go back to exactly as I was beforehand, and work out the next album in the same way that I did the first time around. Because that's me at my kind of most comfortable and happy, I would imagine.
I mean, we all can't wait to know what comes from that. This conversation, right? You're like a prolific interview giver. You're inundated, like on the requests you must receive versus what is actually on YouTube must be absurd, because there's a vast array of interviews available from the celebrity interviewer who wants to know about your hair bun to Gay Byrne.
Yeah.
I do want to talk to you about that interview, because there's been no follow-up. We got to see that interview. If people haven't listened to it, we might drop in a clip here.
Okay.
Take Me to Church is not the only one of your songs that has a go at the church. I'm thinking about From Eden, work song, someone new. What intrigues me is that you're cross about baptism as well. You're
baptism. I'm cross about baptism. I think the way I look at it, I'm not cross about the idea of baptism. I just think the idea that when a child is born, and say this is something that is inherently sinful and carries sin and needs to be cleansed, in order for it to be all right and all good with its creator. And I know, I think that's an absurd notion. I mean, the child is very little concept of all things, but surely you would teach him those concepts before cleaning him without his permission. I don't know.
He puts things to you in such a way that, he said to you, I thought that people of my generation were the ones that were upset with the church for the guilt that they made us feel about things that were ultimately very natural.
Yeah.
I didn't think that people of your generation gave a hoot.
Yeah.
And I turned to my wife in that moment and went, but we're the ones that have to fucking live with what's the remnants of it.
Yeah, totally.
When you're in an interview facing this kind of Irish icon, and he puts something to you like that, that's so obviously silly, and follows it up with a question which leads with the sentence, and you're cross about baptism.
I know, right? I know, man. I don't know, what do you say to that?
You laughed like that when he said
it. I just what do you say? I don't know. There was some questions there that were difficult, and I felt that I just, in some way, I'm in no position to be answering questions like this, but also there was a lot of kind of faith-based questions in that interview that were difficult. I found it. I was off the tour. I just come off one leg as well. I think I was too I think I had it was 2 days after coming off a leg in August, and so I was in a still rattled, still had the shakes, that kind of way, like still after the kind of heavy ones.
So do you do any prep going in there, knowing it's going to be the meaning of life with Gay Byrne?
I kind of had, but I did not think that I would be answering questions like, who is Jesus Christ to you?
Who do you do the prep with?
Just myself. No,
really?
I wouldn't. A lot of people are asked to do media training. I've never done media training, and I've never been asked to do media training.
It's a frightening concept, even.
Yeah, I know, right. But it was Gay Byrne he's the grandfather of Irish television, and he's such a patriarchal figure, and I don't know, I didn't know really what to.
I would have been frightened, right? Because whatever you say to Gay Byrne, you're the guy who said that to Gay Byrne. Like Stephen Fry is still, they still have that meme going of Gay's face when Stephen Fry says to him, "What will you say if you meet God?" He's, "How dare you?"
Yeah.
I mean, there has to be a certain amount of fear in dealing with a certain amount of interviews, because you put a foot wrong, and it can crumble underneath your feet.
Yeah, totally.
For a simple thing that's taken out of context.
Yeah.
Without
totally.
media training, is that still there? Is that there for you?
There is still that worry, and I haven't looked back on the interview and stuff. That there's a lot. I could have been a lot. Like if you were to chat to me in a room with no mics on, I'd tell you exactly what I think. You know what I mean? And I'd have a much more passionate kind of. Maybe hard-lined, there'd be a lot of F-bombs dropped, and so you're tiptoeing around you're tiptoeing around the words that
you really want to say.
Exactly, or that have the potential to cause offence sometimes. But that was an interesting one. I don't know, and it's hard as well too to articulate just how, as well, say in that question that you referred to, it's hard to articulate exactly what that influence, say, of the church is over you, say, example, in answering a question. Sometimes it's so vast and it's so pervasive, and it finds its way into every aspect of Irish life as well too. It's a very difficult one to sum up in a few short sentences.
Bob Dylan said that he never felt like he was home. And that always gives me a lump in my throat when I think about that. That No Direction Home DVD is worn through for me. Is him describing that feeling of, what am I doing here? I read the stuff, and my wife and I research this together, and you've got a kind of an old head, right? Did you have the feeling of being more mature, or certainly like you've aged more than a 24-year-old? You speak in a way a 24-year-old doesn't normally speak.
I don't know about that. I think I definitely was always. I was always tall as a kid, and actually, so in that regard, adults always talked to me like I was older, and so I was always the kid in class if I got caught, and I did get caught doing everything because I stood out like a lanky thumb. You know what I mean? Like It was always like I expected more from you. You know what I mean? Or I'm disappointed.
The tallest one here, I'd expect more.
You're tall, therefore responsible, young man. That was, I think that's part of it, but also I definitely did. Myself and my brother, things were different for our family. We'd have things were not always easy. It was tough for my mom and my dad, and so I suppose our childhood kind of we grew up a bit younger, I suppose, and you've a lot of time to kind of to think, but also I think I had a lot of years to kind of just think, and I was very quiet for a lot of years.
And you're in the countryside. I mean,
exactly,
I grew up in the countryside myself. Didn't really have any like local kids to kick ball with. You're wandering.
Exactly. You don't waste time waffling. Like you don't want to waffle to, and you gain a distrust of wafflers. I think I don't know. Possibly. I also had those 3 very quiet years of kind of from leaving college to kind of think about my own values and to consider everyone else's and land, and I suppose that definitely helped with the direction of the work, and kind of going, you know what, fuck it, I'll put my values in the work, and I'll put my values in the music, and I'll put certain things that I think into the music. And then it was definitely a decision to take me to church, I think, somewhere along the way and stuff like that, and then knowing if I was going to write a song like that, I'd have to be able to and I suppose 2 years of interviews with people kind of taking you to task on
to reflect
things.
on things.
Yeah.
I've managed to avoid asking the most obvious stuff. I mean, the same questions come up again and again. I mean, I can't imagine how much that kills you. But can I do a very quick fire with you?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I'd say very quick, but the questions aren't exactly quick answers.
Okay.
What is the most wrong you've ever been in your life? Can you remember the thing you were most wrong about that you look back on and go, man, I really had a fixed notion on that?
Yeah. Yikes. That's a very hard question. Do you ask everybody that question?
I don't. I've started asking because I know myself that I've walked around with a wrong head on things and people and judgments. Aisling B actually mentioned how, just don't be so quick to judge was her one. It's like, we do tend, no more than with the YouTube comments, to be like, blah, rubbish.
Yeah.
Is there an artist that you maybe wrote off in the past that you now go, oh, I can totally see what he was doing there?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, if we're talking even musically, there's definitely, and I suppose because before I was making music and releasing music, who was I but a consumer with a comment section? You know what I mean? And like with an opinion, just thinking that you're right all the time, and then and dismissing. You would dismiss artists, and still do, and like that would be one. I'm very quick to dismiss, in my own head, and I'm very cynical. I just I find quickly that I land on the worst in people, and I go, no, that person's an arsehole.
You're not going to tell me who the artist is that you now appreciate.
No. It's not even. I can't even think of an artist but definitely finding my way into circles. I never imagined that I would find my way into pop circles. Let's say. Yeah. And then just seeing how hard people work for their dream in that circle as well too. That definitely gave me pause for thought, and seeing how many sacrifices they make and how hard they do work and what their dream is in making music that, or whatever the music is, music that just I didn't connect with growing up, and so probably dismissed if it was kind of certain types of pop music, I guess.
That kind of leads on really well to the second one, which was you go on Saturday Night Live. What's the like something you've loved all your life? I mean, you're there, Kristen Wiig and Bill Hader's hosting it. Yeah. You're totally nerding out. What, when you're on the set of Saturday Night Live, is the most surprising thing?
What's the most surprising thing? I will say that okay. I will say okay. I was totally green, right? Totally green, like shitting myself. Obviously, for most American television shows, no more so than Saturday Night Live. Maybe David Letterman again, more so. Just absolutely. Just not ready for it.
What do you do when you shit yourself? Are you pacing? Are you just in bits?
I don't know. I think you just pretend to yourself that you're not, and you just do it because you have to do it anyway. And like, there's no way you're not doing this. You just have to go in there and kind of just walk through whatever flames are waiting for you, And definitely, I had a feeling of in some stages that I felt like the cart was kind of before the horse, and. I was doing stages and TV shows that I just had no experience doing television at all or anything, or performing with a band in that context. So I'd say SNL. What was the most surprising thing? The crew and the local crew and like a lot of the hands are really, really down to earth, and really there's just a good atmosphere, and also how there was even talk like another artist has been there recently, and there was still words going around, and the artist went in there, threw their weight around, and acted the bollocks and was a prick.
Wow.
And there was still murmurs of people decrying that.
Whoa.
And just it still had an awful taste in everyone's mouth about how much of a prick that person was.
I cannot wait to press stop and hear who that is.
I will,
Because I know a couple of people that have written and write on the show.
Yeah.
And they do say that it's ridiculous that like you'll be there pitching jokes to Mick Jagger or Steve Martin.
Yeah.
And that like you do get a very close quarters with these people because they're around for the week in preparation.
Yeah, if they're hosting.
If they're hosting, yeah.
So I think now this person might have just been a musical guest, but
they might have been having a bad week.
They might have been having a bad week, to be fair. But what I loved was that how down to earth and how kind of like they were just like people that working in there day in day out, which for us would seem like for a lot of people would seem like a glamorous place to work. But I mean, they're the crew. They're breaking their bollocks every day.
Yeah, and it's constant. The season is so long.
It's a tough week, you know, every week. And but just how that still for them, it left such a bad taste in their mouth. And they even said it, and they went, "You guys have been really, really nice and really kind," and we're just, you know, I'm a kid there, just like blinking wide-eyed at kind of this, you know, Bill Hader. It's just said hi to me and stuff, and I'm out of my mind, like. And so we always, as that kind of reinforced, and it kind of gave me again a kind of a bit of hope that like people respond to people being good, like just being decent and being good and being nice to people, you know, and no matter where you're going. And on whatever level, in SNL, there's very few levels of TV that are above that, you know. No matter what level you are on, just being decent and actually being patient and not being a prick. To just see how important that is.
Yeah,
like,
it counts for a lot.
Yeah, it counts for a lot. Yeah.
We ask people the same question every week. It's the only question that gets repeated. Is what's the piece of advice that you can stand over, having gotten to where you are? Before I ask you that, so you have a chance to think about it, I know that you're a Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
And is there a plan for The Force Awakens? Where are you going to watch? Where is Hozier going to watch Force Awakens when it comes out? Or is it going to be a situation of, I'm sure I'll get to see it at some stage?
I know, yeah. It's released on the 18th, is that correct?
That's right.
I think that's the day that I fly home to Ireland. If I can swing tickets, they're probably all sold out for the 18th. But if I could swing tickets for like
There's previews on the 17th. That's what my plan is.
Okay, right.
I'm going to go while my kid's at school.
That's amazing.
Which is kind of cruel, but he's 5.
Yeah, he probably lost.
He'd
Can't
be
bring him.
scarred for life watching it. But, it's an exciting time.
It is. I think if I can, I'll try and swing tickets, because if it's out on the 18th, I think I have a few days in Ireland. If I can, I might just go to the IMAX or something like that. I think they're showing. Are they showing it in the IMAX?
Yeah. Are you optimistic?
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that trailer was...
Oh, I am. Oh, for the film, I'm very optimistic. Yeah, I am. Absolutely, I am. There's such a craft, and I get like excited just thinking about like set building and the use of animatronics and the use of actual physical things, like physical.
Why did that ever go out of fashion?
I don't know, man. It's just money, I suppose.
Yeah.
But there's such an art to it, and it means that there's, you know, when you watch Jurassic Park and you see them kind of
stroking the dinosaur,
it's like leaning on a triceratops as it's asleep. Like that still has weight to it. It still has like it didn't age. You know what I mean? It's still the craft is still there, and it didn't age. Whereas you look at any of the previous Star Wars films or anything done on green screen primarily, how much it ages. Even Lord of the Rings or something like that, as great as they are, it all ages, you know what I mean? But there's something about a physical puppet or a physical animatronic device that just, you know...
Yeah, we're going to remember it. Yeah. Not stroking a tennis ball on somebody's head.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the advice, I mean, you must get asked it all the time.
Yeah.
But really, like you're equipped to offer a piece of advice for the up-and-coming artist that they give their right arm to hear. And then just as a guy who's had a lot thrown at him early in life, what are those pieces of advice?
I don't know. I avoided probably the greatest piece of advice for a long time. I don't know why. Probably just thinking that I couldn't do it for a long time. But my uncle was always like insisted, long before I actually did it myself, he was insistent on me just actually sitting down and working out and recording myself a bit more and arranging and producing myself more. And in that way, knowing what I wanted and what I didn't want from the work. And long before I actually had the gall and the will to just fucking do it, I think he bought me Cubase and everything. So I know that sounds like it's not even advice, but it was kind of like, just do it yourself, you know.
Get on with it.
Just get on with it and do it yourself. And nobody was kind of gonna. I suppose I could elaborate on that for days a bit, you know, and nobody's really gonna make it happen for you. But that was a big one, and actually just realizing that you have to figure it out yourself and you have to do it yourself, and especially if you're working in the arts or you're working in something creative. It's trial and error, and you're going to be unhappy with it for years and years, possibly. Like as I was, you know, I started writing at 15. I wasn't happy with it until I was 23. You know, I wasn't happy really to show that work.
And who knows what you can look back when you're 30 and go, oh, I thought that was happiness.
Yeah, true. I thought I was pleased with that work, but at least pleased enough that you're willing to show it to somebody. And another, I don't know, the way I kind of work is I was always one to kind of hold my cards for a long time until I know that I'm ready. And I think it's important to be discerning of your own work. I think it's good to be your own worst critic and your own harshest critic, and actively so, and try to find holes in your work. And I guess, yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
But those are rock solid, man. And even if you leave us with those, I think people are going to be happy.
Maybe, yeah. Well, okay, yeah. I can think of nothing else anyway at the moment.
I gave you the get out and you jumped at it. Well, listen, Andrew Hozier Byrne, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a good chat. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it was good crack. Thank you.